Hello and good evening, Chicago. Welcome back. It's another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Not a whole lot of live stuff to talk about tonight. The Blackhawks are off along with the rest of the NHL due to COVID breakouts. The Bulls were going to be playing the Raptors. Nope, that got postponed because of COVID. There is some college stuff going on. The DePaul women are taking on Notre Dame tonight. We'll peek in that before we're done. But then, the big segment for tonight, Christmas is right around the corner. You know Santa's got something for everybody. We're going to make out the list for every single team in town. College, pro, it doesn't matter. There's going to be something under that tree for everybody. That stocking is going to be full, and we're going to help make out the list. We're going to have some fun doing it. Plus, well, we'll talk about the Bears. We're going to do that, I suppose. All that and more. This is Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio. Buckle it on up. Let's have some fun. And welcome on in, everybody, to Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio. I am your host, Adam Karnick. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday night, or if you're listening as a podcast later on in the week, thank you for making time for me, for us, for this show. Happy holidays. We'll start right there. Got a lot to get through tonight. Speaking of the holidays, we're going to have some fun tonight with a segment I'm going to call Mariah Carey. You can all figure out why when we get there to it, where we're going to be making Christmas lists for all the teams in town. We'll have some fun with that. And, of course, we have to be talking about the Bears because they're still playing games out there on the field, both literally and figuratively with all of us that have to watch it on a week-in, week-out basis. But before we get any further, of course, let's acknowledge our sponsors for the week, starting first with the Southern California Warriors. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organizations. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. Find them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, Instagram at Southern California _Warriors, Facebook Southern California Warriors. And Background Check International. Businesses, are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Fremen take care of that for you. Kit founded and has managed Background Check International since 1994, and he's here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes, such as identity theft or any other illegal activity. Go to his website, bcint.com, or find him on Facebook, Background Check International-BCI. And IE Sports Radio is available on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook just by searching IE Sports Radio, or go to our website, iesportsradio.com. For the last 7.5 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next step. When you go to our website, iesportsradio.com, you'll see our Patreon link with 5 different tiers, the first one starting at just $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout-out on all 27 of our shows, and shows 28 and 29 are due to debut here very shortly. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you all very much for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And a shout out, of course, to at Bay Area Raised and at M. Los Great for supporting us on Patreon. And if you are listening live tonight, you can find this show is available on Twitter at IESRC. I am at Adam_Karnick. And if you are listening live tonight on Spreaker, like Taryn or Mike, good evening, gentlemen, then please be sure to hop on into the chat room. We can interact, have some fun back and forth that way, talk with Taryn and Mike, and anybody else that hops in. We'll have some fun and just go back and forth that way. All right, so the Monday night game. Let's start with the positives, shall we? Where has that defense been for the last few weeks? They went out there with no names at defense. I mean, you had Thomas Graham Jr., a 6th-round rookie, who was making not only his first start, he was making his NFL debut Monday night, going up against Justin Jefferson, and had 3 pass breakups. You had guys named Bo Pete on the roster. You had just a mishmash, hodgepodge collection of guys, and they held their own. Justin Jefferson, yes, he had a touchdown in the first half, but he was held to under 50 yards receiving. Excuse me, I'm not sure why. All of a sudden, I'm not being able to breathe properly, I guess. They held Kirk Cousins to less than 90 yards throwing. He had 84 yards throwing on the game. And it's not like Dalvin Cook went out there and torched them, and so they didn't need to have all those passing yards from Kirk Cousins. I'm pulling up the numbers right here from the game so that I make sure I have Dalvin Cook's numbers correct in here, but I believe he was held for under 100 yards on the game. He didn't score. That was a Herculean defensive effort. I was shocked. Yeah, Dalvin Cook, 89 yards rushing. Justin Jefferson, 47 yards catching. Kirk Cousins, only 87 yards throwing. He only completed half his passes. That was spectacular. I went on 3 and out right before the game. I mean, literally right before the game. It was a 7:00 show with a 7:15 kickoff. Thank you, Mike. He jumping in and saying Dalvin did not score. He knows because his fantasy football team really could have used those points, I'm guessing. Or maybe you were playing against Dalvin Cook. I'm hoping you were playing against him, not counting on him for your sake. As I know we're in the fantasy playoffs. In one league, my work league, I was on a bye, thank goodness, because this past week hurt to try to keep up with all the games and who was active when, where, and how. In my home league, I'm in the consolation bracket, so this week I wasn't too concerned with it. I don't want to finish in last place because then I have to host the draft, but that's a whole other can of worms. That's not why you're here. So thank you, Mike, for confirming. Yeah, Dalvin Cook did not score against the Bears. Oh, good. Mike did still win, but it was closer than he would have liked, I'm sure. But a win is a win, and especially in the playoffs, you take them however you can get them. So good job, Mike, for getting the win. Unlike the Bears, who, despite this spectacular defensive effort, I was going on 3 and out on Monday night, and I commented that the way the Bears were going to have to play defense was just to almost say, screw it, just blitz on every down. Just get to Kirk. Get to Kirk, because it doesn't matter how open the receivers are if Cousins can't throw the ball on time, on rhythm, accurately. And by golly, they did. They got 4 sacks of Cousins. They held him to only 50% passing on the night. And they held him to under 100 yards. They held Justin Jefferson to less than 50 yards receiving. That was a terrific... The Vikings finished with less than 200 yards of offense. And the Bears... Listen to these numbers. Yardage, Bears, 370. Vikings, 193. Yards per play, Bears, 5.3. Vikings, 3.2. Passing, 26 of 39 for Justin Fields. 12 of 24 for Kirk Cousins. Cousins was sacked 4 times. Justin Fields just 3 times. And this was... The Vikings came in giving up the fewest sacks in the NFL. And their defense came in getting the most sacks in the NFL. And the Bears won. And it wasn't... They gave up 6 sacks, but somehow miraculously got 7. No, it was only 3 sacks. They got 4. Yet, at no point in time did it feel like the Bears were in that game, because at any crucial point, they shot themselves in the foot, whether it was Fields losing a fumble on the second drive, David Montgomery fumbling on the next drive, Tevin Jenkins getting a holding penalty, the absurd 4th and 1 play where apparently nobody knew what play was called and Fields just had to run around and hope and pray, and he wound up taking a terrible sack. 1 for 6 in the red zone. That's scoring. That's not just touchdowns. That's scoring. 5 times winding up in the Minnesota red zone, 20 yards away from scoring, and nothing. 3 turnovers on downs and a blocked field goal, and then a touchdown, a meaningless touchdown on literally the final play of the game. I just don't get it. I don't get why they make things so hard on themselves, why they can't just be consistent. But we're also, what are we now, 15 weeks into the season. They are who they are. I know there's some concern over whether or not Justin Fields is growing the way we'd like. I think there's, unfortunately, a lot of... There's too many factors working against Justin Fields this season. And unfortunately, it starts with the coaching staff. It starts with Matt Nagy still 15 weeks into the regular season. Not even the preseason and the training camp and all that ramp up, all that time. Still insisting that we've got to run my offense my way, my scheme, regardless of how well the quarterback and the players around the quarterback are equipped to run that scheme. There was a damning quote I heard from Bill Lazor in the pregame before Monday night as I was racing home to get ready to do 3 and out. They were talking about how Tevin Jenkins got thrust into the left tackle spot after being out all season and finally, being activated for the roster against the Packers and then ultimately making his first start on Monday night. And they talked about, was there any consideration to offering help to Jenkins considering the circumstances? And Lazor, I'm going to paraphrase. He effectively said, no, when a backup comes in, we expect him to fill the role exactly as the starter would. And that's just wrong. And the fact that we have to explain why that's wrong is a problem. Backups are backups for a reason. There's a reason no team in the NFL truly goes too deep at an offensive line spot. Certainly not left tackle, arguably the most important position on the offensive line. They just don't. There's not that many guys to go around. If you have 2 guys that are capable of starting, then probably you should trade one of them so you can get some assets and plug some holes elsewhere on your roster if you've got 2 guys that are truly capable of starting at left tackle. It's the same for quarterback. If you have 2 guys that truly are capable of starting, then you've got holes elsewhere on the roster. Trade one of those guys, plug those holes. Part of what makes good teams great is dealing with the shifting sands of a regular NFL season. Players get hurt. It happens. It's a natural part of the game. It's an unfortunate part of the game, don't get me wrong, but it's a war of attrition out there. And the teams that do the best, part of the reason they do the best is because they adapt to what's going on with their team. Hey, we've had to go to a backup at this position. Let's help him out. He's an offensive lineman. Let's slide some protection his way. Let's chip over there. Let's have an extra tight end come in and help. Or it's an interior lineman. We'll have the center slide over and help him. Or we'll have a guard help out in that area. You do things to help compensate. If it's a wide receiver, hey, let's plug you in. Instead of moving you around the formation. Let's just plug you into, you play the X role, you run the X routes. Just worry about that. You compensate for what's going on. You don't just, well, you're the next man up. We expect you to play as, in the case of Tevin Jenkins, the man he's coming in replacing is a future Hall of Famer in Jason Peters. Not that Jason Peters is going to show highlight reels necessarily from this season when he gets enshrined in Canton. But that man's a Hall of Famer. You can't expect Tevin Jenkins, a rookie, to come in and just be a future Hall of Famer simply because, well, you're the next man up and the guy who just went down's a Hall of Famer, therefore you're going to be a Hall of Famer. Now get in there, kid. That's idiotic. It's part of why Nagy's got to go. You can't adapt to the game that's literally happening in front of you. Before we get out of this segment, I do want to give props to Thomas Graham Jr. He had the 3 pass breakups, like I mentioned, had a strong debut. There were a lot of people on Twitter that were mad at the Bears. Where's Thomas Graham been all season? Graham admitted, hey, I had a horrible camp. I needed that time in the practice squad. I needed that time to figure things out and get things sorted and get things straightened out for me. I wasn't good coming out of training camp. I wasn't good coming in practice. And part of the reason for that, I had forgotten this. He sat out the 2020 collegiate season for COVID reasons. He didn't participate in the 2020 college season. So the last time he had played any meaningful football was January of 2020 in the Rose Bowl for Oregon. That's almost 2 years ago. I'm looking up when exactly the Rose Bowl 2020 was played. That was New Year's Day 2020. So almost completely 2 full calendar years ago was the last time that Thomas Graham appeared in a meaningful football game. Outstanding work, young man. Congratulations. You made the most of your situation. And he is now on the active roster. I would expect that he's going to play on Sunday against Seattle in Seattle. Amazingly enough, the Bears, even though they played on Monday, they're going to come into that game on Sunday the more rested team because the Seahawks played last night on Tuesday in Los Angeles. So the Bears will actually come into that game having been on longer rest. They'll be on 6 days rest, and the Seahawks will only be on 5 coming into that one. I wouldn't be surprised if Graham doesn't have as strong of a second game here. Now that there's some tape on him, we'll see what Russell Wilson can do. But still, tremendous debut. Congratulations, Thomas Graham, on an excellent NFL debut. All right, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we are going to debut a new segment that I am choosing to call Mariah Carey. I'll explain in a minute. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What is going on, everybody? This is Ben Metello, the host of the Yinza Report, right here on IE Sports Radio. I'm bringing you the latest in the Steel City, the City of Champions, from the Steelers, the Penguins, the Pirates, as well as the college game with both Penn State and Pitt. You could join me every Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, where I'll be talking about everything from the Steel City, the City of Champions, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey, what's up, sports fans? You're looking for a different type of sports talk show, something you haven't heard before? You got to check out the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday on 2 Live Stews Radio, 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Sports talk at its finest. Always have great guests, playing some good hip-hop. You don't want to miss it. Make sure to tune in to the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Want to catch up a little bit in the chat room. Mike was commenting. You just heard Mike Pat's voice there on the drop for Let's Whine About Sports, which he does an awesome job on that on Sunday nights. You should definitely check it out. Starting to focus a little bit more into Washington, D.C. area sports, so the Washington football team, the Washington Capitals, Wizards, things like that, but he still gives you an education every Sunday night about the wine of the week that he picks. And sometimes it's a beer, sometimes it's even a harder spirit. He was nice enough to give myself and my co-host Zach on Tuesday nights for the Neutral Zone a little bit of coaching and prep as we borrowed his show idea and sampled some vodka on the show. So, good teammate. Mike was chiming in the chat that when I was talking about the Bears there, that this is the sound of a bewildered Bears fan. Exasperated might be the better term. I just want the Bears to have competency. We're going to get into that because that's actually the perfect segue into this next segment that I am calling Mariah Carey. Why? Well, it's Christmas. We all have heard the song at least 1,000 times this month. All I Want for Christmas Is You. Well, this is the Chicago edition of that. We're going to go around team by team, sport by sport, all around the city and make up a Christmas wish list for everybody tonight. And we're going to start in the college ranks. And we'll start with DePaul. Why? Because they actually were one of the only teams active tonight. The DePaul women were hosting Notre Dame. Unfortunately, they fell to the Golden Domers 91-86. Anisha Morrow, the freshman from Chicago, led the Blue Demons in points with 19 points. She also had 10 rebounds for a double-double. Also chiming in on the scoring with 18 points was senior Lexi Held. So the Blue Demons fall to 11-3 on the night with that loss. They are now off until, pull up their schedule. Their next game now is on New Year's Eve, hosting UConn. Suddenly no longer top 10 ranked UConn. The UConn women have fallen to 11 in the standings, but the DePaul women are always a strong team, so no reason to suspect that would change this season. So let's start right there with DePaul. On the women's side, all we want for Christmas, just keep racking up wins. Just keep winning. Just keep winning. On the men's side, we want this to be real. The DePaul men's team, they haven't played for a few nights. They've had to forfeit their first two conference games due to COVID issues. So we want health for the Blue Demons men's basketball team. But in the games that they've actually played, they've only got one loss on the season, and that was to Loyola earlier this month, so a crosstown rival. They did also have to cancel a game against Northwestern because of COVID issues, but the Blue Demons historically on the men's side have just not been good. They're off to a solid start this season, 9-1 in the 10 games they've played. They've had to forfeit their first 2 Big East games. Those were scheduled to be against St. John's and Seton Hall. Creighton and Seton Hall. They're next scheduled to play a game against Butler next week on the 29th. So a week from tonight is when they're next scheduled to have a game. We'll see if they're able to actually get that one in and not have to worry about more COVID protocols. But if DePaul can get some Big East wins and get some respectability back to that program as a whole. So that's what we want for DePaul. All we want for Christmas for the DePaul men's basketball team, some credibility, some legitimacy in that program. Let's go over to football. We find the University of Illinois. All we want for Christmas for Illinois is a bowl game. Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, reportedly is fighting hard to try to get Illinois into a bowl game down in Jacksonville. I believe that's the Orange Bowl. Of course, I say that now that sounds way too nice of a bowl. As I'm stopping to try to look up what bowl they're trying to get into. But Brett Bielema, all we want for Illinois is to do well in a bowl. That's what we want. That's what we want for Illinois. They were surprisingly it would be the Gator Bowl. They could possibly be a replacement for the Gator Bowl. That would be excellent for Brett Bielema and the program to get a bit more legitimacy for them after an impressive first season for Bielema. The Texas A&M had to back out of the Gator Bowl, so Wake Forest now needs to find somebody. They need to find a replacement for Texas A&M. Illinois has been mentioned, even though they were just 5-7 in outside bowl eligibility. But money is involved. You'd much rather have Wake Forest play somebody rather than nobody and not have the game. And Shad Khan, who is an alumnus of Illinois, is trying to get the Fighting Illini into the Gator Bowl. So all we want for Christmas for Illinois football is a berth in the Gator Bowl. Northwestern football. That was a rough season for Northwestern. Not at all what they were hoping to do after appearing in the Big Ten championship game a year ago. The Wildcats instead finished with a rough, abysmal overall record of just 3-9 overall and just 1-8 in the Big Ten. Coach Fitzgerald's name comes up a lot. It came up quite a bit in NFL circles last year. There was talk about him possibly even going to Green Bay. At some point, he's talked with the Packers. He's almost always rumored to be interested in the Bears job were that to become available, which hopefully it will. We're getting there. but Pat Fitzgerald is so good for that school, for that program. All we want for Christmas for Northwestern is for Pat Fitzgerald to stay at Northwestern and stay with the Wildcats. All right, let's get out of college then. Let's jump into the pros. The Chicago Sky, the reigning WNBA champions. All we want for Christmas for the Sky is health. Part of the reason that the Sky almost snuck into the playoffs in the WNBA and became one of the lowest seeds ever to win the WNBA championship was because they were constantly playing banged up, they were constantly playing hurt, and they couldn't really get into a rhythm until the playoffs started, and finally they gelled as a team. So we want to have health for the Chicago Sky. We also want to get younger at point guard. Courtney Vandersloot, she is a legend. She's going to go down probably as one of the best point guards in WNBA history, certainly in that quarterback type role of just setting up her teammates. She's not going to be with the team that much longer. They tried to address that in the draft. They had to trade ultimately their first round pick because she just wasn't working as quickly as they would have liked. So finding somebody to be the heir apparent for Courtney Vandersloot and health. That's all we want for Christmas for the Chicago Sky. The Chicago Blackhawks. I've talked about this before the last couple of weeks. I am a recovering Blackhawks fan because of the Kyle Beach scandal. I haven't been following the team as closely as I have in years past, just because that scar is still fresh for me. The team has made a lot of the right moves, though. The Wirtzes allowed the independent investigation to go forward. They seemingly wanted to get to the bottom of it, and I believe them that they genuinely did want to get to the bottom of it. And they removed people from positions of power in the organization who were responsible for that atrocity to occur. And they ordered their lawyers to come to a settlement with Kyle Beach. It took a little longer than we would have liked. It took about 6 weeks. I would have liked it to have been a little faster than that, but they reached a settlement. Lawyers, everybody's got to make sure that you're doing the best thing that you can for your side at all times. It's frustrating, but I get it. What I would like, the NHL announced, we talked about this yesterday on Neutral Zone, and it became official this morning. The NHL is not going to allow its players to participate in the Olympics for COVID reasons in China here in a few weeks, in about 6 weeks or so. From the Blackhawks, I'd like to see Kyle Beach involved in the U.S. Olympic hockey team in some capacity, and not just as the token guy. Obviously, if he's willing to do it, but I'd love to see Kyle Beach involved with that team in some way. Use that platform to help him, to help show that it's okay to come forward, that if somebody's abusing you, it's not okay, that is not okay. So all I want for Christmas from the Blackhawks is for Kyle Beach to be involved in the U.S. Olympic men's hockey team in some form or capacity. let's go over to the baseball teams in town then. Let's start with the Cubs. All I want for Christmas for the Cubs, somebody in that starting rotation that can throw faster than 90 miles an hour. God bless it. Everybody else in baseball has figured out that the easiest and fastest way to get batters out is to throw elevated high heat. And the Cubs don't do that. And they've been so stubborn about this. It's the one thing that Theo Epstein couldn't figure out. Jed Hoyer hasn't been able to figure out. I want them to get at least one, ideally, I'd love to have two starting pitchers that can go out there and throw 95, 96, 97 miles an hour up in the strike zone for strikes so that guys chase and get out. For the White Sox, all I want for Christmas for the White Sox, a different manager. I feel like, I know I've been very critical of Tony La Russa pretty much ever since they hired him. It felt like the wrong move at the time then. It still feels like the wrong move now. I'm not arguing against La Russa's legacy. The man is he's in Cooperstown. He is a Hall of Famer. He deserves to be there. He helped modernize bullpen usage in the 80s and 90s. He's won multiple World Series. That was then, this is now. It feels like he's stuck in a bygone era of baseball. Came back from being out of the game for 10 years. Rubbed the players the wrong way right out of the gate. Maybe kind of sort of softened that out. You listen to Tim Anderson and it's kind of like, yeah, they just know to ignore him at certain times. He didn't understand the rules. Okay. The rules for extra innings were new this year, admittedly. But still, that's why you have a staff to help you with those things. But to me, the biggest thing that still bothers me with Tony La Russa, you looked at the playoff series against Houston. I'm not saying this is why they lost to Houston, but he never adjusted the defense to where Houston hitters were spraying the ball. Now, the Houston hitters were very good. They did a good job of putting the ball where guys weren't. At the same time, they were kind of lining up with their spray charts. With here's the data of, hey, here's where Jose Altuve generally hits the ball. So let's align our defensive players there. We can have a separate conversation of, is there too much shifting? Is there over-shifting in baseball? Is that one of the things that needs to get fixed in Major League Baseball to not have teams shift so much? We can have that conversation. I'm very willing to have that conversation with people. But in the meantime, you're allowed to do it. The data is there to show. It's readily available. Hey, here's where these guys tend to hit the ball. Move your defensive players so that they can more easily make the play. And he doesn't do that because, well, that's not how we play the game. Maybe not in your day, Grandpa, but it's not your day anymore. Either adjust or get out of the way. I don't have an obvious replacement to put into that spot, but all I want for Christmas for the White Sox is a new manager. Chicago Bulls, maybe the most fun team in town right now. They're not playing tonight. They're starting to get some guys back from COVID. They had their own COVID outbreak that shut them down all of last week. They played on Sunday night against the Lakers. They played on Monday night against Houston. Got a couple of wins. They're off tonight because Toronto is now dealing with COVID. Sensing a theme here in all the major sports right now. COVID, 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 COVID. But the Bulls are exceeding, I think, all of our wildest expectations for this season. Yes, we thought they'd be better. We thought that, hey, this team might be competing for, the 7th spot, the 6th spot, the 8th spot, the bottom of the Eastern Conference playoff seeds there. As we sit here just a few days before Christmas, the Bulls are 19-10. They are in first place in the Central Division, and they are in second place overall in the Eastern Conference, only a game and a half behind the Brooklyn Nets. All I want for Christmas for the Chicago Bulls is health. And I want this to not be a mirage. I'm not saying they need to stay in the number 2 spot all season. I'm not saying they need to stay atop the Central Division all season long, but to stay in clearly and obviously a playoff spot, that's outstanding. All I want for Christmas for the Bulls is to get the guys back that are currently on COVID and for everybody to stay healthy and for this to not be a mirage. That's all I want for Christmas for the Bulls, which then leads us to the Bears. The Bears. I threw this out there earlier today. I threw this out there to both on Facebook and on Twitter. Chicago fans, what do you want for Christmas from your teams? I only heard back from Bears fans, which not completely unexpected. And there were all kinds of fun things that I was hearing from Bears fans. I want to go through some of them right now. Some of them were silly, like, I just want them to beat the Giants, or all I want for Christmas from the Bears is next year. To not give me high blood pressure every game. I love that one. From Kerry Williams on Facebook. A 400-yard passing game by a Bears quarterback. I think we could get that. Maybe not this season, but I think next season we could get that. All I want for Christmas for the Bears is a clean house. Nagy's gone. He's got to be. There's no way he can survive this. But what about Ryan Pace? Ryan Pace, to me, he's starting to feel more and more like Crane Kenny from the Cubs circa 2010, 2011, when he initially took over for Jim Hendry as the general manager before Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer came in, where he was a good company man. He did good things for the Cubs, but he was not in the right role. Ryan Pace, he's starting to feel like he's a good company man, that he's somebody that the McCaskies and Ted Phillips really like. Okay, fine. I'm not convinced that he's the right football guy to have. Constantly trading up to get players in the draft. It's okay to do that occasionally, but to do it all the time puts you in a bind where you've got holes on the roster and not enough ways to fill it. The Bears will have the 5th most salary cap space heading into next season, which is great, but you look at how some of their salary cap is allocated for next year. Money like $7 million to Jimmy Graham, who's doing nothing for you this season, and $9 million allocated to Nick Foles to literally not play, to have all those tight ends because Matt Nagy's got to have them. So I want a clean house. I want whatever title you want to call it. I want the Bears version of Theo Epstein. I want the president of football operations, who then selects a general manager, who then selects a head coach. I want a clean house in that front office, and I want the Bears, whomever they pick to be this team president of football operations, to have the freedom and flexibility to, if you see a problem, change it, fix it however you think is best. Do what the Bulls have just done with Karnisovitz and Mark Eversley, with Acme. I'm loving that acronym for those guys. Acme, Arturas Karnisovitz, and Mark Eversley. To do what the Cubs did with Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer. Heck, I even heard it this morning on my drive into work. To do what the Blackhawks did back in 2009 with John McDonough. Yes, obviously, that's now tainted and stained because of what happened, the scandal. But they had the idea right. That's what I want, is a clean house, a new football president of football operations, a new general manager, and a new head coach, and to finally join the modern day football times. All right, we've got to get out of here because Beantown Brandon is coming up for Titletown Sports. Normally, he's right before us on Wednesday nights, but had to shuffle the schedule around. He's actually coming up here in just about a minute and a half, so we want to make sure that we get out of Brandon's way so he can do his stuff. Definitely want to check him out. He will be talking all kind of Patriots, gushing over Mac Jones, I'm sure, as they're coming off of a rare loss, but still good things over there for the Patriots. All right. Want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Southern California Warriors and Background Check International, for continuing to sponsor us week in and week out. That is really appreciated. We really appreciate that. Go to our website, iesportsradio.com. Check out the Patreon link, please. Again, Bay Area raised, MLOS great. Thank you for supporting us. Please, if you're able and willing, we would love your support. We give you shout-outs on all of the shows, give you other great stuff. We're not just asking for money's sake. You're going to get something out of this, too. We want to be there to help you, and we all work together and grow together. Thank you to Larry for all the hard work that he does, keeping everything afloat on the station, keeping schedules aligned and shuffled and juggled. Thank you to Taryn and to Mike for hanging out with me tonight in the chat room. Finally, thank you for listening week in and week out. I really do appreciate it. Next week, we will, of course, be breaking down Bears-Seahawks, seeing what that particular game may have in store for us. We'll have some other fun and surprises along the way next week. It's still holidays next week. Until then, everybody be safe. Be careful while you're traveling. Please, please, please keep yourself and your families and your loved ones safe. Have a wonderful, fun, and Merry Christmas. Next week, we will be back. Until then, Ta-ta. Stick around for Beantown Brandon. This is Chi-Town Weekly signing off.